Today we're going to be working on Lesson 31, which is found on page 163 of your text. In this lesson, we're going to be working through area, or finding the area of rectangles. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Now let's say that I had a rectangle that was 3 inches by 5 inches. So I'm just going to draw out a rectangle that's 3 inches by 5 inches. And I wanted to find the area of the rectangle. Well, what I would be trying to find would be how many square inches can I fit onto this rectangle. Now a square inch is a square that is 1 inch on each side, and it looks something like this. So I want to know how many of these square inches will fit onto the space that I've drawn out right here. Well, remember that this is 1 inch or 5 inches by 3 inches. So if I divide this up into 1 inch increments, so that this is 1 inch, this is 1 inch, and this is 1 inch. And I'll go ahead and divide it down here too to make it easier. And so I'm going to just draw some horizontal lines to divide these up into 1 inch increments. And then I divide this part of the rectangle into 1 inch increments, and I would have 5 of those. So let's go ahead too and mark the top of this, like so. Then what I will have done is I would have drawn the number of 1 inch squares that cover this rectangle. Now, how many of these 1 inch squares cover this rectangle? Well, I have 5 inches here, and I have 3 inches here, and 5 times 3 is 15. So I have 15 square inches that are covering this particular rectangle. See, this is 1 square inch, and to indicate that it's a square inch, I put a 2 here, and we're going to talk about that later on in the course, why we do this. So to indicate a square inch, I put 1 here. That means I'm making measurements in squares. And 3 inches times 5 inches is 15 square inches. Okay, so let's look then at example number 1. In example number 1, it says how many floor tiles, 1 foot on each side, are needed to cover the floor of a room that is 8 feet wide and 12 feet long. So we have a floor that is 8 feet by 12 feet. And we want to know how many 1 foot tiles would cover this, 1 foot square tiles. Well, we would divide this side into 8 equal parts, which is a little bit more difficult if you're not. Well, that looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to divide this up into 12 equal parts. So I'm dividing it in half first, and then I'll have 6 on each side. So if I divide it into fourths, and then divide each of these fourths into thirds, that makes it a little bit easier to divide it up. So how many 1 foot by 1 foot tiles are going to be needed to cover this? Well, we have 8 times 12 1 foot tiles. And since 8 times 12 is 96, it's going to be 96 1 foot square tiles that are going to be needed to cover this. So 96 tiles. And we would say then that the area of this is 96 square feet, which we can write feet with a 2 by it to indicate square feet, or you can spell that out, 96 square feet. So this is the 2 different ways that you could write the area of this particular rectangular room. Look at example 2. In example 2 it says, what is the area of this rectangle? You have a rectangle that is 4 centimeters by 8 centimeters. Well, to find the area of a rectangle, we simply take the length and multiply that to the width. But rather than writing out length and width all the time, we just use the letters L and W. L stands for length, W stands for width. The length is 8 centimeters. The width is 4 centimeters. So 4 times 8 rather is 32. So this is 32 square centimeters would be the area. And you could either write this as 32 centimeters with a 2 beside it, or 32 square centimeters. And either way would be correct. In example 3, you're told that the area of a square is 100 square inches. So that means that the area of the square is 100 square inches. We want to know how long is each side of the square. Well, to get 100 squares inside of here, we would have to say, if this is a square, that means all 4 sides are the same. And the only number when multiplied by itself to give me 100 is 10. So each side would have to be 10 inches long. Because 10 inches times 10 inches is 100 square inches. And that means that this also would be a square. So each side then is 10 inches. Now, we're also asked, what is the perimeter of the square? Well, if each side is 10 inches, that means that the perimeter is going to be 4 times 10 inches, which is going to be 40 inches. Now, notice that we use square units for area, but we do not square our units when we're talking about perimeter. So notice that I do not have a 2 here for perimeter. I just say it's 40 inches because that's a measurement around something. I put the 2 here to indicate that that's how many squares are covering something. Okay, so there's a difference in the way you express the measurements. Okay, so what I want you to do is work through your practice problems and then come back and we're going to work on those together. Okay, so we're working with area. And we found that to find the area of a square or a rectangle, that we multiply the length to the width. Well, let's go ahead and try your practice problems and see how you did. Okay, practice problem A. We're asked to find the number of square units needed to cover the area of these rectangles. For reference, square units have been drawn along the length and width of the rectangle. Well, rectangle A is 4 units by 6 units. And area is found by multiplying length to width. So that would be 6 times 4, which is 24. So it's 24 square units. Or what you might put down is 24 units and put a little 2 right there, and that means the same thing. It means square units. Okay? Okay, let's look at problem B. In problem B, we have a square that is 7 by 7. So it's 7 units by 7 units. So for this particular one, we would say area is length times width. So it's going to be 7 times 7, which is 49. And so this is 49 square units. Or what you might say is this is 49 units, and put your 2 here, 49 square units. Now for problem C, we're given a rectangle that is 5 millimeters by 8 millimeters. So our area is going to be length times width, which is going to be 5 millimeters times 8 millimeters, or 8 millimeters times 5 millimeters. It doesn't matter the order in which you multiply. And this is 40 square millimeters. Okay? And also remember you could write SQ and then put in mm for square millimeters. Okay, problem D. For problem D, we're given a square that is 12 millimeters by 12 millimeters. So again, area is found by doing length times width, which in this case is going to be 12 times 12. 12 times 12 is 144. So this is 144 square millimeters. For problem E, we're told the area of a square is 25 square inches. So we have a square whose area is 25. Well, for the area to be 25, that means that the length times the width must be 25. Since we have a square, both sides have got to be the same. Well, the only way to get 25 with both sides being the same is to say 5 times 5 is 25. So if this is square inches, that means that each side is 5 inches long. Like that. And 5 times 5 is 25. So each side is 5 inches long. So for problem F, it says, what is the perimeter of the square? Well, the perimeter has 4 sides, and each side is 5 inches. So 4 times 5 is 20. So the perimeter then would be 20 inches. And that's it. Well, have a wonderful day. Enjoy your math, and I'll see you tomorrow.